All right, so welcome everyone. Today I'm joined by a lot of maker, well, potentially holders, but also large community from MakerDAO, and we're here to discuss ideally how to arrive to a maker compensation framework. So this comes from a couple of blog posts that were very, and I won't say controversial, but heated discussions, very, very interesting. So before we start, I actually wanted to share a couple of thoughts that I put into a presentation. Um, so can you guys see it or not yet?
That's good.
Good. So yes, the first one. Before we start, the disclosure. Maybe I need to apologize a bit if my tone wasn't. Usually, it's hard to capture tone in a forum. So so yeah, maybe I sounded I don't know, either sarcastic or I was playing a bit of devil's advocate. But let me assure you that there was no ill intention. Then yeah, the other thing that I wanted to mention is the bias. I do have a bias, and probably everyone else does too, even the most neutral among ourselves. So I just wanted to disclose that as well. And then what else did I want to say? Yeah, the unknowns. There are a lot of unknowns in this situation and several others actually. But the fact that this topic is very complex and has many dependencies uh, make that all these unknowns add even more layers of complexity. So ideally, we can stay on topic and reach an agreement and something we are all happy with and we can work with. So the first thing that I wanted to, again, sorry if I didn't mention it, but feel free to interrupt if you want to interject. So the first thing that I wanted to discuss is on how to frame the issue, right? So I think it was Seb that mentioned that one thing is HR and the other thing very different is how we compensate people. So ideally, we discuss one of these without getting into the other, right? So that's basically something that I wanted to to set from the get-go. And I don't know if anyone has any questions about this or if any disagrees with this framing. All
I
right.
think I think part of it is that there are some that are slightly overlapping,
Mm-hmm.
but I think we'll get to it more in the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So there was this way. I think it was long that described it quite well. And basically, one of the fundamental questions that we are dealing with, and something that we should definitely consider, is when should maker mint MKR, right? So one of the extremes was my hyperbole in which we should never mint MKR, burn the keys, and the protocol is perfect as it is right now. And then there are less drastic or extreme versions of that. Right now, there is so the MKR token mechanics make it so that we do mint MKR whenever there's bad debt. So to fund the system, that's what happens every single time. And when things are going well and we are producing a lot of fees and the surplus buffer gets filled, we tend to burn MKR, and that's why the token is in the long run deflationary. That said, I think it was Long again that raised a couple of good points about dying fast and dying slow. In these situations that I described, when we do mint MKR, are good examples of dying fast. So if there was a lot of bad debt and a lot of DAI was issued without the proper backup, people would lose faith in the DAI, and eventually the whole system would collapse, right? So that's one of the things we need to consider. And yes, the other argument about dying slow is that it's quite hard to visualize. So potentially something that we do now will have a huge impact a couple months or years down the line, and it's very hard to predict right now. Pointing to other projects or cases of success and failures might help us, but only so much, right? Like this is a unique situation, a unique project, and it will be hard to
Juan, really,
predict. Yes.
sorry for interrupting. Really quickly, can you just elaborate a little bit more on the dying fast and dying slow concept? I didn't really hear Long talk about it, and I'm not really sure like what it's talking about.
Yeah. So by any means, Long, if you want to give your
I
own,
can do it if you like. Yeah. So so I made this point on the forum in Juan's most recent thread. If you do want to kind of go and read up, but I kind of made the point that we essentially currently mint MKR to prevent the protocol from dying, right? We mint MKR if, as Juan said, we have bad debt and we don't want the DAI to be unbacked. And presumably we would also mint MKR if we were unable to pay salaries, right, for the core units, like irrespective of direct MKR incentives. Because to essentially be in a situation where we had no money and then fired all our staff would also, I hope everyone agrees, be a quick death. So the kind of so the kind of implication there is that we mint MKR to stop the protocol from dying. But the kind of issue is that it's much easier to tell when the protocol is going to die fast than when it's dying slowly, right? And I'm kind of not making a value judgment to say like whether the protocol is going to die slowly if we don't mint MKR. But my point was more that it's really hard to tell what we might need to do over the long term with MKR. And it's kind of worth considering that if other protocols are willing to mint to kind of raise money, then that is kind of an advantage they will have over the Maker protocol, right? So I think that kind of summarizes it. David, does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you so much. It does.
It's also a good segue into the next point, which is, of course, there are trade-offs for minting and not minting at any given point. The first one is the image, the PR and market reaction. How would the market take it? Some people argue that we are kind of like breaking the meme or the social contract that Maker has. I personally do not agree with this, but I think it's a valuable point or position to have. The other one, and this is a little bit related with what Long was saying, is that some people in the market see it's not that the salary is the base, or the base salary is not the minimum that they're going to accept, and then the rest is playing the lottery. They actually want to have an impact, and they are looking at the total compensation package that they get. So this is important to see in and to analyze the market we're in, and ideally we're competitive enough so that we can retain top talent and we keep being one of the leaders out there. I think that's the vision that we all have for Maker, right? And then I don't know, Long, if you wanted to touch again on the core unit guarantees versus the governance guarantees, or I can quickly go over that.
Yeah, I can kind of briefly say it as well. This is actually something I kind of realized when I was talking to Bourbon privately about this. I'm not sure if he's here, but the kind of what I kind of feel this issue boils down to is that both kind of groups in like Maker governance and core units kind of both want guarantees. Like governance kind of wants a guarantee that Maker MKR will be net deflationary, and the core units kind of want a guarantee that they will get the amount of MKR that they expected, right? And this kind of comes to the suggestion some people said about like minting like a fixed amount of MKR, right? Or making sure that it stays under the inflationary limits. And you then can't provide a guarantee to the core units. So it's kind of this observation that the kind of, not the question we're trying to answer, but like those two things are kind of mutually incompatible. You can't both give guarantees to the core units to get a certain amount of MKR and to governance to keep MKR deflationary, right? So the question then is whether it's more valuable to, well, not more valuable, but like whether it makes more sense to give that guarantee to governance or to give that guarantee to the core units.
Isn't governance guaranteeing like MKR payout at the point that they ratify the actual core unit and their proposal, right? So like if smart contracts got ratified, that's kind of like a promise to pay out whatever vesting is, right? So presumably if the protocol doesn't have enough reserves on hand to do it without minting, it would have to mint to fulfill its obligation, right?
Yes, so the current proposal from smart contracts leans towards giving the guarantee to the core unit, right? Rather than to governance.
But there are ways of there's some middle ground here, and that's the MKR in the foundation. Of course, we never talk about the MKR in the foundation, and when the foundation dissolves, I mean, something is going to happen to it. Either it just stays there forever, or it gets burned, or something happens to it. But here's the thing, that we have there's so much MKR left in the foundation. According to my estimates, a minimum 100,000. So we have some slack here. We have a room for MKR minting up to a certain level, and it wouldn't even be a breach of the social contract.
So a couple of things to unpack there. First of all, Panatex, I don't think that it would be breaching the social contract. As I mentioned in the beginning, maybe in your view it is, but for me the social contract is that when we need Maker, we mint it to avoid well, this potential dying slow that Long was talking about, which for me would be not growing right now. There's a huge opportunity in the market. L2, I don't know, real world finance. It's a lot of topics that we can get into and become even 10 times bigger. So not going there might be the end of Maker, even if we don't see it today. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is that I think that this needs to be a little bit separate, right? So right now we don't know what the foundation is going to do, and I guess you cannot force them to tell you to have that information and incorporate it. So until they do communicate what they're going to do, and then by all means we can reframe the problem and have this same discussion. But until then, I don't know if it makes sense to start speculating. So the way I would go for it right now is to think of the worst case scenario, which is the foundation is keeping the Maker or doing a party and inviting us all. I don't know. So whatever they do, but that's the worst case scenario in which we don't dispose of this Maker to actually use it for growth or for attracting talent. And then if they do say, hey, we're going to burn the Maker, even better, or we're going to give it to past employees, I don't know what they're going to do, to be honest, but it's more like it's an unknown that we cannot control right now.
Yeah, that's correct. I agree with that.
Which brings me a bit to the next slide, which is this the right time to be having this conversation? So right now we can start working on some kind of framework, or we can wait. If we wait and we say, hey, governance should block every single Maker MKR proposal, such as the one from the smart contracts team, then we might start not only failing to attract new talent, but also losing the existing talent, right? So that's a very dangerous path to walk. Then, well, of course, we have the increased overhead for governance to review proposals. This meaning that right now we spend a lot of time saying like the smart contracts proposal is good or not, and a lot of yeah, a heated discussion happened there as well. So if we do not have a framework in place, what we're going to see is that we have to do this for every single core unit that wants MKR and that we want to keep all on board. So it has to do with overhead as well. And then the framework that I'm trying to build, what I'm proposing is that it can be a live document, so it doesn't need to be set in stone. Governance can pretty much overturn any decision the minute after, right? Like, I mean, it does have a reputation to maintain, but potentially maker holders can vote something completely opposite the very next day, and it could technically pass. Then what I was mentioning about the new information, not only this, but any type of new information, we should incorporate it and review this probably relatively often, at least once a year, but maybe more often. And then, yeah, having this would enable core units in their proposals, meaning that if there's a core unit that thinks that they deserve MKR or that they could attract talent with MKR, they could use this framework to have something unified instead of going out there researching and starting to see what's best for them and governance, right? So there's these benefits to it. And yeah, I don't know if anyone has any comments or questions about this. Okay, what I wanted to propose next, and by all means we can correct this or improve it, I guess. But we should start a working group like almost now. This shouldn't take that long. I guess it's whoever's interested in participating in this, and we can set up a couple of working sessions where we decide what to do. So once that's done, we need to gather the questions that need to be answered. There's a lot of little things, and I put a couple of examples in the forum post. But there are a lot of edge cases to cover as well. So ideally, a good framework would cover them almost all, or as many edge cases as possible, and leave everyone happy with the, I don't know, vesting cliffs, percentages, and whatnot. And yeah, once that we do have that, if there are contentious points, and I think that there will be, we should raise this to the larger community, and potentially, I don't know, do ranking vote or some kind of signal request where we ask what's best, and then we should propose alternative frameworks and let governance decide on what governance considers that's the best framework. And then, yes, as I was saying before, if there's any new piece of information or I don't know, the market changes for any given reason, then we should definitely reassess our framework, and so that core units can benefit from it and governance is happy with it.
So what does that mean for, sorry, go ahead, Frank.
Oh no, just a quick question, Juan. Do you think it should be an impartial working group or a little bit of both?
I mean, yeah, I think it's hard to be impartial. As I was saying in the beginning, I think everyone has a bias. You probably are more aware of it or less. So I would be very happy if we had voices from both extremes trying to come to some, I don't know, some kind of agreement. I don't think that muting a side of governance is the best way to go about it. That's what I'm trying to say.
So what would that mean for core units like smart contracts that have already proposed their own vesting structure?
So here maybe Derek can give us a little bit more of an information. A potential solution would be that they say, okay, if there's some kind of framework that we agree with, we'll roll back to whatever the framework says. Otherwise, we will keep whatever we just proposed. And of course, they would have the date backdated to whenever their framework, their their budget was approved, right? But I don't know, Derek, if you want to mention something about it.
Yeah, I mean, that pretty much aligns with where we're at the moment. I mean, we've had this conversation for a month back and forth in the forums. It's been really good. There's been a lot of feedback. But at the end of the day, we haven't really agreed on which way goes forward. So I think you summed it up nicely where you said, let's have governance decide. So at the moment, that's where we as a team stand, that we will put the proposal forward as it stands today, and have governance decide at April the 26th once it goes to a vote, and we will see what comes back and essentially let the MKR vote for how they see it. I think we, as you said, yeah, we will add a clause into the MIP that I will be submitting today in a couple of hours, I think is the deadline. And that will, include something along the lines of reserving the right to switch from our MKR vesting plan to the MKR framework that you guys have now started discussing, but I've yet to agree on. So I think that's going to take some time, but I'm certainly not an extreme voice, but I would love to join that conversation. I think we should have as many people involved as possible. So yeah, have that encompassing all groups. I think every group who has a vested interest should be a participant in that group. It only makes sense. So yeah, I mean, summarizing, that's basically where we stand. We'll submit it as it exists today, as you've seen it. I do have a couple of small changes to some terminology in the MIPS, but that's probably another topic not for here. But as the MIP and the MKR vesting stands, it's as has been published already.
Great, thank you, Derek.
Okay, can I just make a quick
Sure.
comment regarding the working group? So Derek mentioned we should have as many people in it as possible. I just want to disagree on principle that I think having large amounts of people trying to do something is a bad idea. I would kind of much rather see representatives from each group. If people can find someone that they think is a good representative, or like maybe a couple of representatives from both groups, rather than just adding everyone.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. We don't want a free for all, but we want those who have vested and valid involvement in the protocols to be a part of it. Absolutely, that makes sense.
Hey, Juan, I have a question. And I'm sorry if this has been discussed and I missed it. Has this idea been discussed where everybody joining the DAO at this stage gets the same amount of maker over, X period of time, and the teams that are considered most valuable simply get paid more?
So Kim, I think that's an interesting question for the working group, right? There are several ways of dealing with this, and each way has its own trade-offs. Another potential solution would be to get a percentage of the. So I don't know, something around 250K is the base salary for a smart contract developer. So if your salary is 125, you would get half of that, right? So that would be also a little bit of weighing the market value. Another one would be how much is Maker worth in the market? If Maker is worth less, things are looking less great. So potentially you should get more Maker because you're trusting in the project whenever things are not looking great. So there are different ways, each with its own trade-off, and I don't think that we are able to solve this in this call right now.
I actually
Thank you.
slightly both agree and disagree there. One, I think the price discussion is actually why the conversation gets derailed. So it's very important for the working group to kind of see MKR sort of recognize that it has three functions and that they're specifically trying to build guardrails around one of those, which is aligning incentives, right? Like you're getting MKR because you're growing the ecosystem, right? So that's just a point to like either add to the working group, but also just not fall down the price rabbit hole. Yeah, that's a suggestion.
Fully agree. I think we should discuss this within the working group. It's a very important topic, and it's definitely in the discussion list that I'm preparing.
So Juan,
Sure.
I just wanted to ask a clarifying question, and I may be the elephant in the room, so I'll disclose who I am. For those that don't know me, I do work for the foundation as the head of people success, but I'm attending this call as an MKR holder, and just curious for the conversation. My clarifying question is one of process when it comes to the decisions that have to be made. The smart contracts team has put together a viable proposal, I think. And so are we saying that this working group would work to address the MKR potential vesting, and then there would be a willingness to go to vote to commit to what's been proposed, with a potential to address that after the MKR vesting piece has been? I guess I'm just not clear, based on what Derek explained, how this would work. And I'm not familiar with the governance process, so.
Sure. So I mean, what Derek is saying, and we have to kind of thank the smart contract team for this, is that they are flexible enough to go back in their proposal and review it and adapt it to the standards that this working group has found, right? If, however, that does not happen, they would get what they proposed, because that's what governance potentially voted for. If they're
Yeah. So just to clarify there, it leaves it very open, saying and undefined by saying we will 100% accept what the working group comes up with. I think I can't, on behalf of the team, say we will absolutely go back. I think what I can say is that we have the option, not the obligation, to go back on behalf of the team with what the working group comes up with. So, you know, we will put the proposal forward as it exists today, and then work with the foundation, with the framework group, to identify what this looks like going forward. And, you know, hopefully we can kind of arrive at a center point on what we've all been talking about in the forum so far. So hopefully that clarifies that little point.
not fair. So sorry if I implied that.
No, not at all.
Can I?
It's yeah.
So I have a follow-up question there, but I want to check that Jeremy has got the answer that he kind of wanted. So just to kind of maybe summarize, like the smart contracts team can submit their proposal into April, which I believe is the plan, and it will get voted on, you know, as it goes in. If that passes, then, you know, we'll follow that proposal, unless, I guess, the smart contracts team agrees otherwise. Any sort of subsequent, like, framework or something that the governance wanted would then be voted on separately, right?
Okay, thanks, Long. I appreciate that clarification. And I guess one of the things that I'm not familiar with either is that, you know, we talked about once something's voted on and approved, you know, what is the community then obligated? You know, so I guess what I'm trying to understand is this a 4-year commitment that's being voted on? Is it an annual commitment? That's the piece that I'm unclear on.
Yeah, so maybe Derek can clarify that as it's kind of his proposal.
Yeah, so the smart contracts proposal is for 1 year. So the budget we are requesting is for 1 year. The MKR vesting is over 4 years. So at the end of 1 year, let's say that at the end of this month, the proposal is voted in, and we are continuously working for the first year, we would get the cliff, which is 25% of the MKR amount, which is, I think, 248 MKR for the first year. If governance then decided and said, oh, wait, we have competing smart contracts team, we want to reassess the situation, we want to change things, mix things up, then it's 100% within the rights of governance to say we are supporting different options or putting different options on the table for everyone to work together towards. So you're not necessarily locking in a 4-year MKR commitment. That could change, and governance is at any point in time, depending on our performance, able to vote however they wish with any proposals that come up. So there's a lot of flexibility here, and 4 years in crypto is a long time. So we're aware that this time frame is a long time, and that yeah, governance has a level of control with the way voting and executives work.
Okay, so then the proposal that's being put forth is for a 1-year budget, essentially, right? So that includes, paying for what has been put forth and the potential for a 4-year vest. But if things were to change, is that 1-year cliff vest still locked in? I guess that's.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So
we should be really clear about what governance actually has the ability to do. Like, governance can at any point screw you over and say that you're not getting the MKR. Like, I think that would be disastrous for obvious reasons, but technically that is possible.
Correct. Yes.
And again, my questions are merely for understanding. I'm not trying to, bend the rules in any way, or it is, when I look at this from a proposal perspective, what will MKR voters be voting on in, I believe at the May 26th, right, is when the proposal is supposed to go forth. And that would, sorry, yes, April 26th.
Yeah.
And so it's approved, but that's the, as Juan laid out here, the framework working group may get started and have an idea of, hey, here's a community-wide proposal for MKR that would then potentially adjust what's been proposed. Long to your point, you have to balance out, what's been committed to previously and what would be committed to going forth. Is that an accurate statement?
I think so, yeah. I kind of sort of echo your thing. It needs to be really clear what governance is agreeing on, whether they're agreeing on the 1-year budget and like the 4-year vest, or like the 1-year budget and like the first year of the vesting, right? Because that could end badly if you guys had the impression that it's 4 years and governance is the idea that it's 1 year, right? Or the first year of that vesting.
Which brings me to a question. Does it make sense to actually put the vesting not in the mandate that's part of the MIP 39C2 sub-proposal, but rather part of the budget? Does that make sense? Because I know that the budget you can modify after the fact through governance votes, but I'm not so sure the process is as straightforward with mandates themselves.
So I guess the short answer is yes, but you can also modify the mandate, right? But it should be in the budget section mostly because it has to do more with budget or with monetary issues than the mandate itself. But it's just, I mean, MIP is just to make things clear, right? You can potentially just draw, I don't know, some drawing and present it, and people can approve it. But it's there as a framework to make it clear.
Right. So just to echo what Derek said, after the fact, let's say the working group does create, like a overarching framework. The smart contracts team, since it was, in this example scenario voted in, they have the option to switch, but not the obligation.
Correct.
Yeah, so it makes sense to switch only if it's a better proposition.
Yeah, I kind of want to make that point as well. That makes it like pure advantage for you guys, which is maybe fine, but that's something to be aware of, right? Like, because you can just kind of like switch if it ends up giving you guys more MKR, and not switch if it doesn't.
Right.
I mean, the counterpoint to that, Long, is that if smart contracts has a much better deal than anyone else, potentially there will be tensions, and I don't know if the smart contracts team wants that as well, right? So it's,
yeah.
I don't know. I'm trusting in that everyone will be smart enough to avoid conflict.
So I'm kind of imagining, so like this smart contracts guys may not agree with this, but maybe you guys could agree to switch after the first year, like unconditionally. does that seem reasonable? Then regardless you get also, so you have the option to switch in the first year and then you switch this like at the second year, just to otherwise, just so things are consistent across the core units. Is that something you'd kind of consider, or?
It's difficult to say because I don't know what I'm considering based on the framework of what comes up in the framework. But essentially, yeah, I mean, if it shows some vesting over time, and the thing I'm most keen on is long-term success. So if we have a long-term window that is relatively close to what we've proposed, then possibly, yeah, but I don't know what the conditions are yet, so it's difficult to say.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I mean, again, it's worth reiterating that if we, the smart contracts team and governance in general and MKR holders don't align, there's always the potential, there's always the opportunity for governance to say, we just don't agree with it and we're going to vote against it, which is essentially what we're doing by putting the proposal as it exists now forward. We're getting that direct feedback. So that can happen at any future point in time. So so yeah, I mean, I want to have that dialogue. I want to understand what the framework's going to come up with so we can better align longer term. Just difficult to say without knowing what it is.
I was going to echo that. I think long that if someone thinks that the proposal is from a smart contract is not fair, they should voice it now. But if governance approves that because it is fair, potentially what the working group will come with will be something that's kind of like similar in content, but potentially different in form. So that's what I'm envisioning.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, I'm definitely hoping on that, right? Like that it will be similar in content. But like that's another thing I can't guarantee, right? So if governance agrees to this 4-year vesting thing for smart contracts, and then the framework agreed ends up being like, you know, half of that proportionally for like everyone else, or like, you know, would be half of that for the smart contracts team and then proportionally for everyone else, then others might be upset. Like essentially by accepting the smart contract proposal as is, we are locking that as kind of like the anchor point for everything else, right? Which is maybe fine, right? That's not necessarily a problem, but that does constrain future actions on the general framework.
Yeah, well,
Also, the work with the frame. So just one point. I think the work that's going to happen in the framework isn't going to be isolated from us in the smart contract team. I think we do want to participate and understand what's being discussed and how that's forming up into an overarching framework. So I don't see it being a point in time that here's a drop of what is the framework, and then all of a sudden us being like, whoa, like our position will be known throughout the discussion and working with everyone else to make sure we're on the same page. So I'm hoping that clarity will help identify sort of where we stand on things as we walk through it, and what the benefits are for different mechanisms of vesting.
I was going to say, Long, I agree with like what you're saying and where you're going, but I think the thing I hear is right now it's a bit too early for us to like go through so many hypotheticals, just because we just, like Juan suggested, the working group, right? So we don't even know who's in the working group and so on. So I think that if I would propose, if the smart contracts team is willing to like give it that month for things to give a little bit more shape, where we can get a little bit more clarity and feel good, like, okay, who's in the working group? What is it going to propose? Then we can start comparing and asking those questions. It might just maybe be a little bit too early, like in this call specifically, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I just think like kind of 4 years is a long time to be locked into something that people maybe decide, you know, 2 months after it's voted that they maybe don't want, right? And I kind of worry that that will lead to kind of bad feeling over those 4 years, right? I mean, I understand where you're coming from, Derek, and where all the smart contracts guys are coming from, right? Like the 4-year vesting is part of the package that they kind of want and kind of agree is acceptable. So, sort of
Right.
giving up the ability to sort of fix that like after the first year is obviously not good for you guys. So. Anyway, we're maybe focusing more on smart contracts than we maybe should be. So maybe we want to try and make it more general again.
Are there any questions or comments? Something that we are overseeing maybe?
I'm curious, like what level of engagement there will be in on-chain polls. So I know we have like a weekly governance cycle where we could do like more generalized like polling. So yeah, I'm curious if the working group intends to engage MKR holders before offering some sort of final framework or package.
So as I was mentioning, and I can share again, but one of the things that I wanted to, let me share this again quickly. So I think this is what you're mentioning. So any contentious points should be brought forward, and we can probably discuss them in a wider community if needed, and we can do all sort of polls being off-chain or on-chain, so we get a little bit more of direction if there's anything. But I think it's too soon right now to guess what those will be. I mean, we can start speculating, but it's probably not very healthy.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I recognize that my question is pretty broad given the stage we're at, but yeah, cool.
All right, so who wants to be in the working group?
I have a kind of question related to that actually. I'm curious if people feel that I would be sufficiently neutral if I was in the working group, like from both governance and core units.
I mean, I generally think that people will not be like fully neutral, but you of all people, I personally think you would be a great addition to that group.
Yeah, I'd second that.
Yeah, you have a lot of a fair way of viewing things.
Yeah.
Maybe some other people from governance could chime in.
Yeah, I think that's pretty reasonable, especially as a facilitator, someone who has to deal with it yourself. I think you have a lot of vested interest, which I guess perhaps is a mark of bias, but as Juan said, it's kind of hard to completely separate bias from this. So I think it would be a good voice to be in there.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm happy to be in there. I'm kind of wondering if, like if we want to set up this work group with say 5 or 4 people, right? Like if we have 2 from core units and 2 from the community, do we then want me as a potential person who's neutral, right? Who is taking like the neutral spot? Or do we want sort of an equal split between the 2 groups? Or I don't know. There's kind of other ways we could do this. But I'm kind of wondering. Sorry, okay.
Oh, sorry. Well, I have less of a problem with you being involved, but I do think it is important for optics to include people who are involved with core units and members of the community, just so it doesn't look like facilitators are just trying to line their own pockets.
To extend what you're saying, Seth, do you think that it makes sense to actually include all core unit facilitators at some level in this working group?
I wouldn't have a problem with that. I think, I understand the concern about keeping the group from getting too big. But like as far as just keep, that point about just, making sure that things appear to be above board and all, I just think it might look a little weird to the outside if it's just facilitators that are in the working group.
Yeah, so I would kind of loosely suggest the following, right? Like, I don't think we want lots of people in this group. I think more people are in it, the longer it's going to take. My ideal number would be 3, but I can kind of understand if people would want like 5 or something. The second point is that having an odd number is generally better because you have kind of a built-in way to break ties. We don't have ties because it's not an equal number. But having an odd number requires that someone is recognized as neutral by both parties, which is perhaps difficult in this case. So maybe 4 is a good number, like 2 of each. do from each.
So I think that someone that doesn't know you long would probably think that you cannot possibly be neutral because
Yeah.
eventually you might benefit from maker minting, right? So I don't know. I personally think that you've proven to the wider community that you can be neutral, but then again, it's more up to the wider community to decide what this should be. But I think you could do the neutral part.
What
Yes.
about an alternative option where operational support or somebody contracts like an outside party that perhaps like put together these sorts of packages for other companies and just have them kind of create a proposal for us? Like, was that option thought about?
Yeah, I think Amy just proposed something useful in the sidebar. Maybe you could do that on the recording as well, Amy.
Yeah, I was thinking of more groups that should be represented. So someone in, and these could be more than one in group, just depending on whatever the size is. But first, the kind of current core unit, any mandated actors that are in the current core units right now, and then to also represent those that are being proposed or will be in the future core unit rep. And that itself could be a facilitator or a contributor. So that also covers the community side. And then a third party, so that might be, you know, some contracted party, and then someone representing kind of governance or MKR holder areas. That's, I would categorize the 4 groups.
So that makes 4, right? I would be tempted to add like a kind of
like a long for wisdom in there.
No, I was thinking like a known community member who isn't necessarily a large maker holder, right? Like maybe you'd want like a larger maker holder and then like a community member.
How much maker do you have long?
Not enough to classify as a large maker holder.
There we go. Yeah, I don't know. I would like to see which who wants to start representing these groups. I don't know, Aaron, if you are interested. You seem to show interest in the forum, and people seem to appreciate your voice. Okay, Brian says would be good to have BC maker holders brought into. Yeah, by all means. And again, we don't need to have someone sit through the whole session. We can consult on important topics, right? I'm happy to be put into contact with any of these people to facilitate, but I don't know if they are interested in it.
Yeah, I feel like we maybe have a lot of volunteers on the core unit side, which kind of makes sense because these are already people that have self-selected as people that want to do things. It may be harder finding community representatives or larger maker holders that are willing to spend some time doing this, or are able to spend some time doing this. But if anybody is willing, please speak up.
Yeah, I'd volunteer to represent community maker holders. This is AES or Mark for that's spoken to me. You've probably seen my posts on the forum regarding this topic.
We have, yeah. I think it'll be good to have you. Yes.
Yeah, he's the only person that forked my MakerDAO budget simulator, so should be a good addition. So I can do other stuff and not running the numbers.
Nice. I mean, I guess we don't need to define this today. Ideally, we would. We can do it offline in the forum, but
I mean,
yeah.
I actually think we should try and do this today, like now, if possible. I mean,
awesome. No one's leaving until we get this solved.
Obviously, feel free to go at any time. But like, we're not going to like vote on the members of this working group because that's going to take ages. Like the people in this call have kind of self-selected as people that are interested. So I think for the membership, we can maybe decide. Yeah. Maybe.
So where are we now? What is the situation?
Of the world?
No, just the group. Are we okay that we use the Amy proposal for 4 people? 1 for the core unit reps, which is long? Or not?
Potentially. I said before, I think odd numbers are generally better because you can break ties. But
Okay, let's say 5 and you as the 5th member.
maybe, or I could. I mean, I don't want to kind of put myself as the 5th member if I can take the queen slot. I mean, to be fair, I don't really want to be involved. I can avoid it, but you know, maybe that ship sailed.
So
Amy,
who represents the core units? Is it?
Yeah, Amy, can you run over like the slots that you were proposing again?
Yeah, so we can also have odd numbers. So current core unit reps, so any of the mandated actors, a rep from there. A proposed core unit rep, which is any it's supposed to represent the groups of people who want to pursue core units but are not mandated yet. And that could be a facilitator or a contributor. I would just recommend that maybe we have 2 from that group then or something. We have a facilitator and a contributor or something. And then the 3rd is a third party, just completely outside. And then 4th is a large MKR holder. And then 5th is long for wisdom.
So I guess I'd rather kind of have like the third party be like the kind of tie-breaking vote, right? If that makes sense. So I don't think we should have me in addition to like a current core unit and a proposed core unit rep. Like I think I'd prefer to see like either 1 or 2 or 5 replaced by like a community member that isn't a large maker holder or isn't obviously a large maker holder. If that makes sense.
If a lot of this discussion is going to focus on, you know, value and who brings value and MKR, I don't see anybody on this call from BD. I mean, next to smart contracts, isn't BD just like hugely valuable? Maybe we should ask one of them.
But I don't think that we're trying to set how much MKR each team should get, Kim. What we're trying to do is set up a framework. So eventually, I imagine it more as these are the way to, I don't know, this is the mechanism to decide how much BD should get.
No, I understand. I understand the framework, but I mean, that's eventually going to be part of the conversation. No, I mean, isn't value huge in dispensing?
How about we have the community members choose the core unit representatives and we have the core unit representatives choose the community representatives?
Okay.
So
does that sound reasonable?
Makes sense.
I would recommend that we sort of follow up this call with a forum thread that's just for summarizing this conversation, and then the proposed working groups, and then a separate thread that's like, if you want to propose yourself as a rep, like write your name down, like as a comment, and then you can just open it up for X amount of time, and each group can decide how they want to manage who they want to have as a rep.
Amy, since you suggested a third party, did you have someone in mind that has enough expertise in minting, vesting, and whatnot that we could use their experience?
There were a few recommendations, but I would also name, like, I would put that in the thread, like, here are some potential people, and then see if people are comfortable with it. Because I personally, don't know them. They're recommendations from other people.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Yeah, we can do that. I mean, that's probably the sensible course. I don't want to spend like more time on this than we can. We've already spent like quite a lot of time discussing things. I kind of want to get the group together at least as quickly as possible because the group's going to need like a week or probably 2 weeks to discuss anyway. So yeah, if it goes to a forum thread, that's fine. But I think we should try and kind of converge on something quickly or as quickly as we can.
But are we okay on the structure, at least? The 5 members decided by each parties, except the third parties that is decided by Amy.
So maybe I'll write this in the chat, but I would propose like potential core, like proposed core unit facilitator, like actual, like current core unit facilitator, third party, large MKR holder, and then like community member, right? That isn't necessarily a large MKR holder. Because then you have 2 people on the governance side, 2 people on core unit side, 1 neutral party. Does that make sense to everyone? But Amy, do you kind of think that makes sense? Because it's kind of similar to yours, but not quite the same.
Can you maybe drop it in the thread?
Yeah, I was going to type it out, but I'll do that now.
I guess what I worry about is a lot of the individual core units. I mean, they don't have a lot of incentive to go with the flow at the moment, right? I mean, any of them could propose their own structure. So I worry about the working group not having necessarily a lot of representation from them, if that makes sense.
So I think it's the opposite pros. I think that anyone proposing like building the budget is hard enough, and then if you need to get into maker vesting and compensation, that's a lot of research, and you need to come up with something sensible. Derek probably knows the pain better than anyone else, and it's much easier to have a framework you can rely on and make sure that it's fair for everyone and has more rate of acceptance, I guess, than starting from scratch every time.
Just one comment here. You have current core unit reps with a plural. So to Kim's point, I wouldn't want to represent BD. You're still saying that BD representative or marketing representative would be participating in this group, or are we limiting that group? I'm just questioning the plural.
Yeah, the plural confuses me as well. Yeah. How does that work?
Okay, cool.
I would suggest just 1 for each slot that is there. I wouldn't suggest multiples.
Perfect. Thanks.
I mean, there's kind of the assumption that since they're representatives, they should talk to the others, the people they're representing. But yeah,
spot on.
Yelong, I just didn't understand your response. So there is 1 representative or many?
So there's 1 current core unit, one current core unit facilitator.
Okay.
1 proposed core unit facilitator or contributor, 1 third party, 1 someone who is known to be a large MKR holder, and then a community member who is not known to be a large MKR holder.
Perfect.
So yeah, so well, I guess we'll move membership to the forum thread because we're already over the hour. But does anyone feel like we're going in a completely terrible direction? I guess.
So I wanted to echo what you said, Long. So ideally we don't rush this, right? And we get it right, but also we don't stall it and take ages to move forward for something that could potentially be done much faster. So we need to think about those trade-offs.
Also, with the idea, with the idea of like a 1-year cliff vest, it also kind of gives people a chance to, I don't know, have a timeline. I think that nobody really mentioned that.
Sorry, could you clarify what you kind of?
So yeah, sorry. What I mean is that like if the smart contracts team is kind of setting the example that the first best things are going to happen only after a year, then other core units proposing their own vesting presumably would also do that. So if a framework was come up with within that year, I don't know. Actually, never mind. As I'm talking through it, I think my thought doesn't really make too much sense. Yeah, never mind.
I can maybe guess what you're saying. You kind of worried that all the current core units are going to propose things in the meantime before we figure out this general framework, or was that not what you were
saying? I mean, like the idea is that for core units that aren't putting up their own MKR vesting proposal right away, they can rest assured that like within the year and being set up retroactively, like they're not going to miss out. Like they can wait for the working group to figure it out. They don't have to kind of put it in their proposal up front. They could defer it and say, put a disclaimer like if in 1 year an overarching framework is not in existence, then we will put up our own custom, some sort of boilerplate like that. But the idea is like there's kind of like a year of runway. That's the idea that I was kind of trying to articulate.
I would encourage, so it's dangerous to agree like unwritten things, right? But I would encourage the other co-units to not propose anything yet, with the assumption that they can backdate them once governance has come up with a framework. Is what I would suggest, because otherwise it's just the incentive is for co-units to just propose whatever they can get away with in the meantime, right? Which is not ideal.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want governance to agree to a bunch of stuff and then have to make everybody switch.
Yeah.
Or deal with rebellion.
Okay, so I mentioned if anyone disagrees with this to speak up, but then realized that that's maybe intimidating given most people seem to agree. So if anybody has concerns about this and they want to come to me in private, then please do. That's fine. I will talk to you and we can discuss. All right, so can we see it? Sorry, Amy, go ahead.
I was actually going to propose like a counter, which is obviously can be a disaster, but it's kind of the backfill. So we can say, by the end of the year, if there's nothing like proposed, so everyone who is currently putting in a core unit, they could propose a structure that might potentially work for them, since it's weird to have just smart contracts propose something, right? But at the end, we'll just backdate it and we'll just hold off on actually implementing them. And if by the end of the year there is really nothing, then the back follows that we go into whatever the structure each core unit has decided. It's like the insurance policy for each core unit, I suppose. Because my concern is like, this can go on forever, and everyone's worried about like also compensation, attracting for compensation packages as a whole, right? So the back insurance for core units is develop one, propose something, but if we can all agree that we on a date, like in the future date, if there's nothing, then this is what we will back into.
But I think that as core units don't have something proposed yet, they will be incentivized to go quickly. So it's...
Yeah. I mean, this is dependent on all the core units, but like, I'm just going to say, like, I don't want to do I don't want to do the work to figure out a framework. I need to have like a general framework come up. So like, I'm just not going to do it until governance figures something out. I would appreciate if governance doesn't take forever, right? But like, I'm not going to push it.
I think making a framework is like, what, 2 weeks? Then you have something that is pushed in front of governance. Takes what, 2 weeks, 2 more weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks? Just to be sure that it will be accepted at some point, because usually if there is a consensus, it should be accepted.
Yeah, that makes sense, Amy, and I think that's a good point. Just saying that Amy was speaking for core units that aren't here or might not be okay with that, which makes sense.
Maybe we'll put it in the operational support to just go through all the core units and get sentiment on where they're at.
Yeah, Chris, no one has. If you want to say that on the mic, feel free before we wrap up.
Yeah, and I sorry I'm like super late to this. I was working on the centrifuge stuff, which we got really close. Oh yeah, exactly. Everyone prep, my connection will go down. Yeah, I just wanted to, I actually agree that I think it's really good that the DAO has a framework for compensation or for like MKR rewards in general. I think it's probably an intractable problem to try and do this team by team. But for the SC team, I think Derek's going to move forward with the proposal that we put forward, and that's primarily because the environment that we're in right now is very competitive, and I'm I'm deeply worried that we end up in a situation we've been trying to rebuild since last year, and I'm worried we end up there again, or worse, because the space is crazy and people are getting offers, and we've interviewed a couple of really good candidates right now, like really good candidates, and they're very interested in the compensation package that we've sort of put together. Have I frozen? Am I still here?
No, you're good.
No, no. Well, you guys are gonna have to stay animated. And so I'm obviously like worried that we lose the ability to sort of attract that top talent, but I'm more concerned that that the less time that, or the more time that goes by that we don't have this like ironed out, that we lose the talent that we already have on the smart contracts team now. So for that reason, I think it's prudent that we push for the smart contract team proposal. And then I hope that either like sets a guideline for the framework, or you know, that the framework can kind of like work around what we did for vesting and distribution. But yeah, so I don't know. That's just the comment that I wanted to make. I wasn't sure if anyone had made it yet. I didn't want everyone to be blindsided by the fact that we're going to leave the MKR portion into the
yeah, that did come up. Derek covered kind of your guys'
okay.
plans.
Yeah. So
cool. All right, so maybe Juan, you can wrap up and sort of say what we should expect in the next few days, few hours, etc.
Yes. So what we've agreed on, having one representative per group. So one will be from a current core unit. The other one will be from a potential future or proposed core unit, and can be a facilitator or a contributor. Then there will be a third party. Then there will be a large maker holder and a community member with low or no MKR. Action items, I will write a forum thread summarizing what today's call and what I'm saying right now. And then there will be a separate forum thread to actually get these representatives. I don't know, Amy, if you want me to set this up, or I don't know, we can ask Pablo, or I don't know, up to you. And then, yeah, we will reach each core unit that's being proposed right now and get the sentiment on the incentives. So if your core unit is either in RFC or it's being drafted publicly, we'll reach out. Also, you can feel free to reach out to either me or Amy, and we can have these discussions. Does anyone else want to say something before we close? All right. So thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure, and I'll see you all in the forum.
Likewise. Bye, everybody.
Bye.